thanks for joining us. In this session, we'll be talking about what it takes for a successful female leader to get to the C-suite. I'm Rebecca Lai, the UK Marketing Manager here at Morgan McKinley. I'm here with and delighted to welcome back Ishreen Bradley, who will be joining her discussions with her client, Teresa Casal. Ishreen combines over 25 years of practical experience working with companies around the world to help business leaders achieve high performance for themselves, their teams, and their organizations. Through Bizas Coaching, the business she founded over 12 years ago, she and her team provide coaching and consulting for leaders in entrepreneurial and multinational organizations. Ishreen's particular passion is to enable female leaders in innovation-driven organizations to reach their highest potential, be inspired by who they are, and be fulfilled by their work. Her work has enabled thousands of executives and entrepreneurs to develop their emotional intelligence and personal brand to match their already high intellect in a way that is consistent with their values and the values of their organization. We'd like this webinar to be as interactive as possible, so we'll be running some polls throughout the session. Please try to participate if you can. Along with this, we'd love to hear from you via Twitter. You'll see the Twitter hashtags and the handles at the bottom left of the screen. Feel free to tweet and share your opinions. The most innovative tweet will win an hour's coaching session with Ishreen. The winner will be announced later on today. Many of you submitted questions when you'd registered, so we'll try to answer as many of those throughout the hour. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to Ishreen.
Thank you, Rebecca. So wonderful to be with everyone again. Welcome to the webinar from myself, everybody. Welcome to everybody. You're all very special people, and I thank you for joining us. I think, Rebecca, we had more than 1,600 people who said they wanted to join today, which is so wonderful. And if you don't mind, I'd like to make a special welcome to some people who are close to me who are on this webinar. And so a big shout out to my lovely cousin Naima, who's listening in from Australia. And would you believe my parents? I had to send them step-by-step instructions on how to join the webinar. So a warm welcome to them and a warm welcome to everybody. And so now when we look at what we're out to accomplish today, you know, Teresa and I have known each other for a while now, and we were looking at what would be possible out of this webinar for all of us, for all of you, for all of us, for womankind. And what we came up with was a possibility of compassionate leadership, which is so lacking in this world. Compassionate leadership and positive growth. So that's what we're intending to bring to you today. In this webinar, we're going to review again the research, only because it gives a great context to the conversation that Teresa and I are about to have. And then we're going to learn from Teresa's experience, which is a real gift to us. She's been a senior female leader in financial services. So first of all, Teresa, welcome.
Thank you, and thank you for having me, by the way.
Such a joy to have you here with us. And just to give you a snapshot, Teresa will share more about her journey with you later, but just to give you a snapshot of how amazing this woman is. She's worked in a number of global banks, including Standard Chartered, at very, very senior levels, including starting up countries for these banks, which means dealing with lots of complex issues. It's not just a case of going in and starting an office. There are regulatory issues, there are marketing issues, there are all sorts of issues that she's had to deal with. So we're blessed to have her with us to share her stories. Thank you again. So good, so let's get into our webinar. Oops, I pressed something I shouldn't have. There we go. Thank you. So here's what we're going to do again. So we're going to go through the white paper. We're going to have a conversation with Teresa, and at the end we're going to look at some questions that you're maybe putting up. I think they're already coming up on the chat page. So let's see. So here again you'll see the challenges that women face at work and areas they see that they need further development. And you can see the big polls here: managing profile and personal career development. And as you look further along, There's being innovative, commercial focus, managing confidence, which you might say is a part of the first two, strategic leadership and planning, personal impact, inspiring leadership, proactively managing your own profile. So this was a slightly different question, which also feeds into managing profile, you'll see. This question was about the challenges that women face, and this was about areas for further development. So you could see that this poll, if we added those two together, would be even higher, right? And then having specialist knowledge. So if we say the two biggest issues are managing profile and personal career development, and we take a look at what people have said around that, we'll take this one on the right first. So I made good progress in the early part of my career by doing a good job. There comes a point where you have to do more than that. Managing profile. The thing I struggle with a little bit is that I don't see the point of going to more meetings if I don't think I'll add value there. So I'm happy to delegate to people who have the right knowledge and not duplicate. That does then mean that I don't necessarily get the face time with a broad range of key business people in the organization as I could. So this phrase for me summarizes the issues that most women face as they move up in their career. And then the other quote here, I was employed for 27 years, had the opportunity to develop a strong network, but did not do that. And this is from a woman who was made redundant after 27 years and hadn't invested in deep relationships. She had broad relationships, but she didn't have deep relationships so that she would feel comfortable going back to them and being vulnerable and saying, hey, I've been made redundant, I'm looking at what's next for me, do you know anything that could support me? Right now, I haven't had many women come to me with that query, but I've had a lot of my male colleagues come to me and say, hey, Ish, do you know what? I've been made redundant. I'm just wondering if there's anything in your organization or if you've got any contact. So what they've done is they've taken the time to build a level of comfort to feel okay about saying I've been made redundant. It's not like something they have to hide or they feel that they can't relate to me. So Teresa, I'm just really interested, those two comments and those challenges. Have you got any insights from your career that you'd like to share with us, or any tips for the women on this call?
Well, yes, first of all, I think, well, it's good to be here with everybody, and this is my first time with you, so I'm just really pleased to be here. So thank you for having me again. And I think from my own experience, I think what you did say about compassionate leadership really appeals to me, and you mentioned vulnerability, and I think that's important. And I think we have to realize that throughout our career, we will make changes. We will be made redundant, maybe once or twice, maybe 3 times.
It's the norm nowadays, isn't it?
Yeah, so I think we just have to be aware of that. And through that, maybe just have a perspective that we can also grow through that, and we can also transition through that in a good way. So my experience is that, it was difficult for me to acknowledge also that I was made redundant also. So I worked in the city, as you know, for just over 20 years, and 2 years of those I was sent abroad to set up the representative office of a European bank, and that was really exciting, and it was a wonderful thing to do. And it's really challenging because you're in a new environment, a new mindset, dealing with regulators. So it is a real opportunity. Crisis hits the city, and it hits the European environment also, and we had to close. So after 2 years, I come back into London, but the fact is that I was made redundant. So it is a shock to the system, and we may not even realize it at the time. And of course, then you're dealing with a different set of scenarios. For me, it was coming back to London, and also I had the responsibility of an elderly mother. So different things come into your life. Or you may have the responsibility of a young family at the same time. So if you're younger,
Yeah.
So you're dealing with different dynamics in your life at that time. So I think the most important thing is just to give ourselves time and to be compassionate with ourselves and actually to share with others what is happening in your life at the time, and just to realize that that network that you have is important, and that the people that you know and developing the relationships at work and outside work is important. So it is about relatedness.
Beautiful.
It is about relatedness.
Yeah.
And just acknowledging who we are.
Yeah, that's beautiful. What you're saying is you're building a relationship with somebody at work, not just this is somebody I work with and have a clinical kind of relationship with them.
A superficial relationship.
Not, exactly. You're getting deeper and connecting as a human being with them.
Yeah.
And you're right, that's what gives you access, isn't it, to go in and speak with them after you've been made redundant or after you've had some kind of crisis. Beautiful. Thank you so much. That's very insightful. And then how about this whole thing about managing impact and not going to meetings where you might go to build your profile, but you know somebody else has better skills?
Yes.
How do you manage that?
I think that's really important because, you know, you obviously have to, you cannot do everything. And if you enjoy what you're doing, and I did enjoy what you're doing, but you cannot be in every place and in every meeting. But we are talking about leadership, and leadership is about handing over to others. And you also choose where you need to be and what is important. So I don't think there's really a compromise. It is about allowing others to grow, bringing others in, so that you can also be released to do other things and to go further and to grow yourself.
Yes, beautiful. That's really interesting. It reminds me of a conversation we had at our last round table, where we had a lady called Claire Harty from Microsoft share about their initiatives for supporting women to grow. And she said that Microsoft has basically thrown out all the old appraisal systems, right? And they're now managing development through conversations on a one-to-one basis. So you're building relationships, but they're also now measuring people on how well they collaborate. So they're moving from what you might call an egocentric environment, where it's all about what I do and how I show up well, to an ecocentric environment, where it's about how you support the whole ecosystem and how you support others in growing. So actually, I can hear some really positive possibilities for women inside that, because I think women are definitely more collaborative in nature. So what you're saying, Teresa, is essentially keep managing to develop leaders. Don't try to put yourself first all the time.
Yes, I mean, there is competition. Our egos do come in, and by the way, we all have an ego, but it is about collaboration. It is about a collaborative aspect. And it is about growing also within ourselves and allowing ourselves to grow and grow in awareness, because that's what leadership is all about. It's not just the technological training, it's not just the practical training, but it is about the human aspect. It is about the human condition too, and our humility, and allowing others. If you collaborate with others, others will collaborate with you. And that is the way to find your network too. People will support you. And, being true to ourselves. And are we doing the job that we really want to do? Are we passionate about what we're doing? And so I would say at whatever stage you're at, whether you're 22, whether you're 42, whether you're 62, whatever, 72, whatever age you are at, just always question and reflect. Am I doing really what I want? Because at the end of the day, it's, yes, banking, you think bonus, but are you really contributing to your organization? Are you really contributing to society? Are you really contributing to your community, because whatever industry you're in, that's what it's all about. You know, at the end of the day, what drives you? What drives the CEO of that company? What drives you as an employee of that company? And that is really what is at core here. That is really what is important, I think.
Beautiful.
Your awareness and your understanding and your collaboration. That's what I need, and that's what you need from me.
Yeah. So useful. Thank you. Good. Should we look at some of the results and successes that women have identified, their strengths? So, I'm known to deliver. I'm good at my job. I get results. I make a big difference to the team. I'm a good manager. People respect me. I motivate others to change. I demonstrate resilience in the face of challenge. I stand with pride, and I make a difference to the organization. So if we look at the quotes that I've got here, I've been told on a number of occasions that I'm an inspiring leader. I'm empathetic, which means I can gain the trust of the teams I lead while maintaining the focus on business goals we're pursuing. I'm an excellent manager, able to motivate my staff so that they can give the best results to the organization. So what we see here is that women use their emotional intelligence to produce great results for their team and for their organization. So the hypothesis that we're floating here is women have the skills they need to succeed. They just don't focus that on their career. They focus that on producing results for the organization and hoping that then they'll be spotted and moved up. Any thoughts on that, Teresa?
Okay, so if we reflect on that, and I know we have little time here, but what comes to mind is that we're talking about collaboration and we're talking about compassionate leadership. And at the end of the day, if we're leading a team or if we're in a team, it is about also having a little bit of a backbone and allowing yourself to have a voice. So giving yourself the permission to have a voice. So leadership is about leading upwards as well as downwards. So, and if we're talking about upwards, you have to have the courage, if you like, to speak about your conviction. You know, to have the courage of your conviction, basically, and to move forward and speak with management and speak with when you believe when you have a case, just put it forward and not be afraid of doing that and not be afraid of getting things wrong. So the most important thing is to have a voice upwards as well. You know, there's political dynamics in every organization. It's politics and power, and we also have to understand that dynamic. So it does mean that you have to have the courage of your conviction and to clear the way for your team to be able to work. And if it creates an unworkable, you know, if things are unworkable, somebody's got to speak up. So, you know, you have to have I think it comes to knowing, being true to yourself, knowing about your industry, and giving yourself permission to speak up, to have a voice, and put a recent argument forward.
I like what you said there. What I heard at the nugget inside that is there are some people who are very good at managing upwards, and they tend on the whole to be male. And there are some people who are very good at managing their teams and looking down at who's reporting to them and nurturing them. And women, I think on the whole, tend to take that role. So it's time, ladies, for you now to start looking at both, you know, what they call middle up down management, right? So manage your team, continue to nurture them, but also pay attention to what's being heard by the leaders around you and make sure you get your message out to them. Great, thank you, Teresa. So now let's look at the underlying factors that we have found give rise to these strengths and give rise to these challenges. So we've already covered this thing we call results focus over self-promotion. So women generally don't like to promote themselves. They think it's egotistical and boastful, and they'd rather compliments come at them. the confidence guilt cycle. And confidence stands on its own, but there's also the guilt element, which is I'm not spending enough time with my kids, I'm not spending enough time with my parents, you know, and I'm not doing a good enough job. So when you're at work, you're thinking about your family and what you're not doing, and when you're at home, you're thinking about your work and what you're not doing. Not very useful. So you need to find a way to break that cycle. That's one of the underlying factors. Bullying, derogatory and defamatory comments, we've covered that in a lot of detail in the previous webinars. Organizational norms and expectations. So the expectation of being at work for certain core hours. You know, there's a lot of technology now. Organizations have put in a lot of systems and processes to support people from working from home. Also, you join webinars and telephone conferences in the evening when you're at home during your family time. So this is a space where you can start to negotiate with your colleagues, with your work, with your managers, to say, look, I'm going to take an afternoon off to go and watch my kids' sports day because I'm doing this webinar in the evening. Right? So it's all a case of how confident you are in negotiating that. Politics, Teresa's already covered, right? The unwritten rules, the knowing of how things work around here. We can come back to that later if we want. Then the lack of management and executive support, lack of sponsorship, working mothers, old boys club. I've recently been working with organizations where people come back from maternity leave and they're not given the job that they left, right? Which actually in this country is illegal, but they're kept at the same grade and the same pay level, but they become a bit of a spare wheel. So is it true that women lose ambition after they have their babies, or is it that the organization doesn't give them the opportunities and you've actually got to fight harder when you come back from maternity leave? So we're doing a lot of research and thinking around that area to see what's actually going on, rather than tolerate the myth that women change their motivations completely after having children. Some do. Some want to be mothers, but then there are some who want to have a great career, you know, and some want to have a mix of both and find the best balance. So yeah, it's an area we're looking at a lot at the moment. And then old boys club and patriarchal culture. Again, we've covered that in previous webinars, so I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on that. Teresa, is there anything you'd like to say on any of those underlying factors?
Well, there's quite a lot, you know, that you've covered there. And if you are career orientated, I mean, I have to admit that I'm also a mother. My daughter is now 27 years old. And there's no reason why you cannot have what you want. And maybe even have it all, as they've explained, as the terminology goes in the market sometimes. I think what is it that you really want? And as a career person, it is important, first of all, on all of those subjects that you've mentioned, Ishreen, to have mentors, to be connected to mentors, and also to have the correct support in place. So, you know, if you do come back from work after having a child, then having the support in place to support you to be able to go out to work and also have time with your family. So, you know, from nannies to housekeepers, whatever it is. And you have to invest in that in order for you to really progress and to do what you want to do, basically. So I think that's important. And the way you look after yourself, and I mean basic things, from nutrition to downtime to even to exercise, and the time you give yourself to look after yourself too, so that you can be there for others, basically, in a quality way.
Exactly. Very important, isn't it, to nurture yourself. Great. Good. So now we're going to spend the rest of our hour, about 30 minutes now, in conversation with Teresa Casal, who has kindly participated in the conversation so far. But we're now going to really focus on 3 topics that will help us draw out her wisdom and what she has to contribute. But before we do that, Teresa, I'd like to give you an opportunity to share your journey and just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to here.
Right, okay. Well, gosh, so my experience has been about 23 years in banking, and I started at the very beginning when in my early 20s. I never actually trained to go into banking, so I really started from the very bottom and trained internally. And yes, I was very ambitious. I was in my 20s, in my late 20s, and I'm sure many of you are in that space as well. And so really, I was trained in-house, if you like. And the career grew with working with very good people, requesting training whenever it's necessary. So I was a trader in the area of trade finance and became very good at it. And I was also very good with people. So I think my strength was precisely that. We talked about relatedness. And I think it was about the way that I related with people, both internally within the organizations. I started as a junior and then a senior trader at Santander, and everybody knows the Santander group. Then moved on to Standard Bank of South Africa, and it was incredible working with some incredible individuals. Moved on to Standard Chartered Bank, and then to a smaller institution, Banis Bank. And from that, you really work across different dynamics, different political dynamics, different technological dynamics as well, and different markets. So my training was mostly in the City of London, and then also abroad, 2 years internationally in Hong Kong. And if I can just add to that, I know that Morgan McKinley, people, we are global these days, and the opportunity to work internationally is one that I would recommend to anybody, because we are a global world. So I think my biggest learning curve has been working across cultures. Working, for me, of course, it's been the banking industry, and that has been a process in itself. It has been in crisis, and working through this has also been very valuable. So I think my biggest learning curve has been working across the cultures, from Latin America to Asia to Central and Eastern Europe, and bringing people together and really building relationship with people. And that is building relationship with customers and really listening for what is important to them, and also having trust. Through crisis, there's also a lot of mistrust. So how do we build trust, and how do you work with the brand of, with your values? I think the values that we haven't actually mentioned today, but that's really important. At the very beginning of my career, one of my mentors said to you, Teresa, what you need, really the most important asset that you will have is your credibility. And to this day, 20 odd years later, that's what I stand by. It is your credibility, and really standing by best practice, standing by your word, and others have said to me, just be yourself, and that's really what it is. And always train, continue to train, always learn. And I would say that's the most important thing. Being redundant, don't be afraid of it. If it happens, it happens. And if it means that you need to retrain, also do it. There's no shame in being made redundant also. So it is about your own growth and allowing yourself to retrain or to grow in that industry. So I think that's the main aspect.
Thank you. So, Teresa, I think we can learn a lot from your experience after you were made redundant as well. So how you got from there to here.
Okay.
So it would be great if you share some of that.
And, you know, one of them is, I think the most important thing that I've learned, particularly in the last few years also, and I'll just reveal to you all that I'm now, you know, I turned in October 54. So I think the most wonderful thing that I have learned, particularly in the last few years, is that we all need support. We can't just do it on our own. So as I was made redundant, I thought, well, you know, then you're all on your own, really. And who do you turn to? So I actually turned to, in this case, I turned to Ishreen as an executive coach and explored what it is that I wanted to do next. And in fact, Ishreen, one of the things that arose out of there is that I really wanted to understand crisis a little bit more and what I was going through and learn a little bit more about myself too. And I ended up, as a result of taking the coaching with Ishreen, I ended up doing a master's in executive coaching at Ashridge Business School. In fact, Ishreen had done this master's herself. And what that has allowed me to do is actually be more aware of my own leadership qualities, my own leadership skill. And whatever I do next, as a consultant, as an executive coach, my own leadership will come through and my own knowledge of myself. And I think wherever I go and whoever I'm with, I will be able to be a better contributor to our community and to other individuals and to an organization as a leader. I'm a better leader, I think, as a result. So, and I would say that coaching, executive coaching, is something that we all need at any stage in our career. We all need to have a sounding board. We all need the support of other perspectives, of experienced people that can really be there for you and support you. And that's very important. And if you are made redundant, you know, that's particularly important.
Lovely. Thank you, Teresa. And I think that applies to any, what I call a crucible event in your life, right? Being redundant is a big one. Having a baby is a big one.
Yeah.
Moving countries is a big one. Any transition that is hard, is challenging, it's a great opportunity to learn about yourself more, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And develop yourself.
But I think most importantly, executive coaching, you know, every bank or will have a team of executive coaches for their top performers. And executive coaching is very valuable to basically empower your top performance. That's where, and particularly leadership at the top is a very lonely place, and that's where it also comes into play.
Yeah.
So I think we have to pay attention to that too and mention it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Understanding ourselves, dealing with what's figural for us, what comes up, and working through that with somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Great. So now, should we move on to some of these questions
here?
So one of the most popular questions that we've had, I think, through this whole series of webinars is, how do I stand out with a group of male-dominant stakeholders? So we put out a blog on this recently through Morgan McKinley, didn't we? And to summarize, I would say the first step is to know who you are, your authentic self. So know your values, your passion, your purpose, and your strengths, and your value proposition. So once you know that, you can communicate it out, right? And the benefit of this is that you are then yourself. You're comfortable in your own skin. You're credible. You're trustworthy. And people can see you, experience you, and know that that's a match for who you say you are, rather than you trying to be somebody else. And the second point in that blog was really just know that men and women are different. There's a great book called The Loudest Duck, in which there's conversation about the elephant and the mouse, right? So in an organization, if you imagine the man is the elephant and the woman is the mouse, the elephant doesn't necessarily notice that the mouse is around, except if she climbs up his trunk, right? But for the mouse, everything about the elephant is important, right? She's got to maneuver around him, she's got to make sure he doesn't step on her, right? So if you take that analogy, you'll just understand that the context that men and women come from are very different. So that's not a malicious thing, that's not an intended thing, it's just how people have grown up and how cultures have grown up. So you need to account for that in trying to stand out. Teresa, anything to add to that one?
Well, I would say, you know, what I pick up from here, how do I stand out with a group of male dominant stakeholders? Well, for me, it's not women and versus men. We are human beings. We are together, and having your values, knowing what you want to do, being certain of who you are, I think that's the most important thing, and being compassionate and being there to listen to the other person, whether they're a woman or a man, and understand, being in their shoes, understand where they're coming from, and then allowing them to understand where you're coming from. And so for me, it is us working together. And you will shine naturally. There's nothing you have to do.
Yeah.
You know, the power is within you naturally.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And I think we have a poll on this, right? So Becca's going to set up this poll for us. Here we go. Right, everybody. So if you'd like to take a look at that poll and answer the question, which of the following have most impacted your career? So we've got 4 possible options there. Here we go. Oh, there's a clear leader coming out there, isn't there, Becca? Okay, just a few more people to vote still. If you haven't clicked your button, now's your chance. Great, can we show those results to everybody? Fabulous. So you can see the leaders there are, I struggle with my communication style, and I have an inclusive approach, so I'm not perceived as a leader. That is very interesting. That'll lead into some of our next questions, right?
That's right. We've had a couple of questions from the participants. How would you handle being labelled as competitive rather than just confident?
Teresa, I'll let you take that one.
You know, it is all about perception, I would say. How are we perceived? There have been many times when when people have said to me, Teresa, you're coming across in an aggressive way, and you are competitive. And for me, I only see that sometimes because you're so passionate about something that you really speak forcibly about it. So sometimes sometimes you won't be able to win. If you're very kind, people will think that there's an ulterior motive. If you're very aggressive, people will think that you're very competitive. So it is about standing for what you believe. And if you know that there's a danger, you have to shout it out. If you know that you think that this is the way, it is about finding consensus, and it is about sharing. And there's nothing wrong in speaking passionately about something. So, you know, different people will perceive your message in a different way. So it is about, again, going back into your core. Are you true to yourself? And you have to have the courage, again, coming back to the courage of your conviction. You know, is this right or is it wrong? And what is right? And what is your truth?
Very good. And is it wrong to be competitive?
And is it wrong to be competitive?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know, I come from Sri Lanka, where cricket's a big thing, and I think I grew up being competitive. So I'm not sure if you are naturally competitive, I don't think you need to apologize for that. I think you should be proud of it and own it. And if you're not, then, you know, there's nothing wrong with that either. It's your choice. I think the main thing is it true to your core and can you own it?
Yeah.
And if
absolutely.
you're competitive, don't try to hide it because people will see through you.
Yeah.
Great. Should we move on to the next topic? Lovely. Good. So the next most popular theme that came up in your questions was how can we build our confidence and keep it high? So Teresa, look, we've done a lot of work together on this as well, and I do a lot of work with my clients in this area because it's the core, isn't it? It's the foundation of what you need to deal with in order to be successful. So why don't we ask for your wisdom first, and then I can add a couple of things in if I see.
Okay, so my take on this is that we have a natural confidence. We know that we are good, and I believe in the goodness of everybody. And I think again it's coming back to relatedness, making sure you're sharing, and for me that sharing means also networking, sharing your concerns as well as your beliefs. And I think somebody mentioned I'm inclusive and I'm not being seen as a leader. Well, being inclusive I think is really important because you're really listening to others. And that is also a protection because they will point out, others will point out things to you that we really sometimes need to listen to. So I think by sharing, by being there for others, by listening, and then by having to say no, or by having the courage to say yes, or having the courage to admit that you're wrong also. So relating to others.
Yeah, no, it's really clear, isn't it? And
yeah.
What I hear inside that also is relating to yourself, with compassion, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So if we don't have compassion for ourselves, we'll beat ourselves up and our confidence will go down. So there are a few exercises that I use to really support my clients in dealing with this challenge. The basic thing you have to do is let go of that inner dialogue. You know, that little voice in your head that's always telling you that you're not good enough or you're not ready yet or blah, 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 that just gets you down. And you spend so much of your life just listening to that person inside of you that keeps bringing you down. So the first tip is really imagine they're making a phone call to you and say thank you very much and hang up the phone on them. Right? Stop listening to that little voice because it's not helping you. It worked for you when you were young. Right? When you were a little child, it helped you to stay safe. As you went through some challenges, it still does sometimes help you to stay safe, but mostly it gets in the way now because you're a grown woman, you're an adult, you can deal with a lot of those challenges, right? Or man, as Anya says, so you don't need to listen to that voice that keeps bringing you down. So find ways of visualizing, letting go of that. The easiest one is to imagine it's a phone call and you hang up the phone. And the other thing that I find very useful is to, once you've worked on your passion and your purpose and your values and your proposition, spend 10 minutes every day just in a quiet place visualizing that success and visualizing the gift that you are to the world. And that'll automatically start to help you feel good about yourself. Your confidence will go up. So those are just two tips. And I know that most of you know that you're good. You know you have self-worth, right? What you need to develop is self-belief in your value out in the world so that you can negotiate your pay rise or your promotion or whatever it is that you want in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, and perhaps if we can say here, Ishreen, that naturally as human beings, it is the fight-flight system within us that will trigger us, and that's naturally there. So that will lead us to sabotage situations, and that will lead us to have perceptions and give energy to conversations or thoughts, just thoughts that have no place in reality, and to attribute thoughts to somebody else and projections to somebody else that are actually unreal, and that sabotages relationships personally and professionally. So just be aware of a flight, fight response, and step back from it, particularly in stressful environments or situations and conversations, and just to be aware of that trigger, because it's there constantly triggering you.
Yeah,
I think
that's right. Yeah,
just to be aware of it.
Yeah, that would help, right?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, so this blog hasn't come out yet. I understand it'll be coming out after the webinar, right? And it's a conversation about whether women are natural leaders. So what do you think, Teresa?
Gosh, as I see this question, it makes me jump, because I think, well, why is the question there in the first place? For me, it's a given. We are natural leaders. But it has been a conditioning, a societal conditioning for us to always be nurturing there. So, we have a natural leadership. Let that flourish. Is it different from the leadership of men? Well, that's an enhancement. We complement one another. So, if you have a son, you want that son to be the best leader. If you have a daughter, you want that daughter to be the best self they can be and the best leader. Of course, we're leaders, and give ourselves permission to be that, and to have a voice, and to be there for others.
Lovely, thank you. So we've been doing a lot of research into this area as well, and what we're coming up with is actually, it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman, you have different leadership characteristics. So we've developed a little diagnostic, and it measures the spectrum from alpha to fluffy, right? So many of you will have heard or even been called an alpha female, right? A very powerful leader, very direct, almost man-like in your character. Now, some of you may have learned and developed to be that way because you think that's the only way to succeed. Some of you will actually have that as a natural characteristic. So what I'm saying here is, if that's your natural characteristic, don't try to suppress it, right? But if you've learned that, and if it's not truly a part of you, I would say, do less of that, because people can see through you, and it'll cost you trust, and trust is the most useful capital you can possibly have, isn't it? If you're at the other end of the scale, yes?
I agree.
Yeah, thank you. And if you're at the other end of the scale, and if you're, I've made up this word fluffy, right? Fluffy is like the kind of woman who's more quiet, who'll give in, who'll watch on the sidelines, who does a great job, but who doesn't naturally get recognized, okay? You could be a man like that as well. It's not limited to women, that behavior and that way of being. So you find yourself somewhere along that scale, and I'm just going to, in fact, Becca's going to put up a poll now to see where you see yourself along that spectrum. So you don't have to be at either of the ends. You could be somewhere in the middle, and we have some choices there. So please do vote. Some choices there on where along that spectrum you sit. Great, lovely. So should we show those results? Here you go. There we go, great. So how interesting. 42% of you say, I assess a situation and proactively respond, and 36, I work towards a solution without giving up on my beliefs. So isn't that wonderful? So many of us see ourselves somewhere in the middle of the spectrum, which is actually a great place to be, right? Now you want to check that that's authentic for you and that you respond that way. But you'll see not many of us are saying where we always put others' needs first, and not many of us are saying we have a truly red personality. So that's a very interesting sample. So we'll be developing a much more detailed diagnostic along this spectrum, which we can invite you all to to comment on maybe next time. Okay, good. Let's see. What else do I have to say? So for those of you who are the 15% who see yourself as alpha, if it's not authentic for you, you'll be somebody who's working really hard to be leader-like. You'll think that male qualities are admired, and so you develop yourself that way. The challenge for you is that you'll find yourself in a double bind, right? So you're trying to exhibit these behaviors that you think are admired and that men will recognize, but at the same time you're at the effect of that because they're not, these are qualities that are admired in men but not in women. So there's much more about this in the blog, and you can have a read of that. Also, if you're at the other end and you get overlooked, then you find yourself becoming resentful. So how can you deal with those? You know, you need to really start thinking about how you're going to manage yourself and find where you sit naturally and really own that place and find out what's strong about it. Okay, so yeah, look out for the diagnostic on that that's coming out later this, well, next year now. We're at the end of this year, aren't we? Wow, that went quick, didn't it? Okay, good. So do we have any more questions, or are we nearly out of time? Okay, so shall we go on to the resources then? Great. So we've got a number of resources that are available to you. So you can request the white paper that the presentation today was based on. You can, if you're a senior leader, you can join our LinkedIn group. My book will be coming out on this subject early to mid next year, or you can choose to book a one-to-one meeting with us. Now, the good thing with a one-to-one meeting, if you're based in Hong Kong, and I know we've got a lot of people based in Hong Kong, Teresa will be in Hong Kong for a short while between next week and sometime in December, right? Mm-hmm. So if you'd like to join us, we're looking to set up a little evening where you can meet her and get more of the benefit of her advice. Then again, just send us an email. We'll be showing up the email address shortly. And if you're based in London, we'll be running some face-to-face programs in February the 9th and 10th next year that you're welcome to sign up for. There's an Eventbrite link. Again, if you drop me an email, then I'll make sure you get that link and you can find out more about that program. So I guess from us, from Teresa and myself, anything you'd like to say to finish up, Teresa?
No, just have a voice, have the courage, learn, be an avid learner, and you will do really well.
Okay, and likewise, thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you with us, and thank you everyone for joining us. And here on the screen you'll see my email address. So if you just email ishreen@bizas.co.uk, let me know which of the resources we've covered you'd like to access, and we'd be very happy to support you with that. And thank you to Morgan McKinley for having us here again.
Thank you, Teresa, and thank you, Ishreen. I think that's all we have time for today. Apologies for any questions that we didn't get to answer today, but keep an eye out for Ishreen's articles on the Morgan McKinley website. She'll be answering more throughout her blogs, and we'll also be sharing this webinar along with her previous webinars if you would like to catch up. So once again, thanks to everyone for joining us today.